Hiya and welcome to BookTube with Simon and Amy. This is my March wrap up. I had said in my February wrap up that I had my fingers crossed that March was going to be a better reading month for me. Spoiler alert, it was not. So I felt like at the end of last month I was maybe in a wee bit of a fantasy reading slump with finishing the Throne of Glass series. I felt like that's maybe why none of the books that I were trying were really sticking. So I thought at the beginning of this month I would give fantasy a bit of a wide berth and I would try and shake it up a wee bit, read a couple of different things and see if that made a difference. Didn't really, but so the first book that I read this month was Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. So this is about a girl and she goes to Catherine House, which is this really exclusive, elusive university, and basically you go in and you don't have any contact with anybody from the outside world. You're not really supposed to talk about your past, you're not really supposed to talk about your family, your friends, your life at all before you're in Catherine House, and it's supposed to be like a really intense study programme that produces some of the greatest minds, and it's a wee bit horror-y, wee bit supernaturally, and it's not quite all that it seems. So I started reading this physically, and the character in it, the way it's written, she doesn't really care very much about what is happening. She's quite disillusioned, I guess. So something happened in her past and it's basically put her off the idea of Catherine House, even though she was very passionate about it beforehand. So she just doesn't really care and she disassociates a lot. She's not really focused on anything that's going on, and so me reading that, it's obviously well written because it made me disassociate a bit. So we'd go to bed in the evening to read and I'd pick it up and I'd start reading it and I'd just zone out, and Simon would be like, "Are you not enjoying your book?" And I'm like, "Oh, aye, I'm reading," and I just end up thinking about other things, like I just couldn't focus on it. So I decided that reading it physically wasn't going to be for me, because I really did persevere with it. So I decided to buy the audiobook of it and try and focus on it that way. I thought that maybe if, when I do my audiobooks, like I never just sit and have an audiobook on, because if I'm sitting then I'll read. So I always do my audiobooks while I'm focusing on, like while I'm doing something else, so maybe have it on while I'm doing the dishes or tidying up. And currently, because we're moving, I've been listening to the audiobooks while I've been packing. So I bought the audiobook and I tried to listen to the audiobook. I ended up starting it from the beginning just because I felt like even though I was about a quarter of the way in, I hadn't really picked up on as much because, like I say, I was just sort of zoning in and out and finding it really hard to focus on. So I started the audiobook again and I got just under halfway through and I just wasn't really feeling it, and I was able to focus on it more, which was great. It's just that the story then wasn't ideal. I just felt like the entire time I had listened to it, nothing really had happened, and the character, you don't really get to know her as a character because, like I say, she's dead like out of it and she's not really caring. So I feel like you just end up not really caring about her. So I actually DNF'd this and I think I got to just over 100 pages in it, and I DNF'd it. It was a dead interesting concept and the book is absolutely gorgeous, so I was really excited for it. So I was quite disappointed in that one, but it wasn't for me. I didn't get on with the writing style, and I just feel like you shouldn't have to try so hard to enjoy a book. So next up I read The Wall Creeper by Nell Zink, and it revolves around a married couple. They're newly married and they are in a car crash, and unfortunately the female's pregnant at the time and she loses the baby. It's supposed to be about them trying to deal with that and trying to navigate married life in the aftermath of what had happened to them. And it's supposed to be a bit quirky. Loads of people have made comments saying that it's really funny, really dark. So it sounded like it would be right up my street and just a perfect wee quick read. And I didn't really enjoy that either. So I feel like, again, the characters in the book just weren't written well at all. We're seeing things from the female's perspective, and she seems like she doesn't really care about the marriage, she doesn't really care about her partner. She refers to herself as an awful wife, And again, like, I could get on board with an arsehole character if they're interesting, and I just felt like she really wasn't. And I felt like it wasn't so much a story of them trying to navigate married life together as much it was they both just went and lived their own lives. So they both just cheat on each other constantly, and they both have relationships with other people. And like, if it's enough in marriage, then grand, cool, glad that works for you. But that's never really explained, and neither of them seem particularly happy that they're cheating. She's happy that he's having sex with somebody else because she doesn't really want to have sex with him, but he's certainly not happy that she's sleeping with other people because he still really wants to have sex with her. So there's just like a disconnect there, and again, like, they never talk about it, they just crack on and continue to sleep with other people. And he becomes really passionate about bird watching, and so she tries to become really passionate about bird watching, and like, obviously to try and have like a communication point there, but she ends up just becoming really passionate about it so that she can sleep with somebody else who's interested in it, and not really so that she can have a connection point with him. And he has another relationship with somebody else, ends up getting really involved in environmental activism and like species conservation, and it was just bizarre. I just felt like, again, nothing really happened. There was no interesting dialogue between the two characters because they were so separate. It didn't really deal with the issue of the miscarriage. Didn't really deal with any of the issues that they were having in their relationship. Didn't really deal with any of the infidelity issues. It was basically just a list. This happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. There was no even really how they felt too much about it. Like, we got brief information about how they were feeling about the fact that they were sleeping with other people, and that was it. But again, like, there was no conversation there. And I just think that if you're writing a book and it is a short and it is just based on a couple of characters and nobody really out with that, and you're dealing with a specific situation, then there needs to be great dialogue and you need to really invest in the characters, and I just really didn't get that from it. So I was quite disappointed in it, and for a book that is so short, there was far too much anal fisting. Like, far too much. So I rated The Wall Creeper 1 star. It was very poor, and if the book was any longer I would have probably DNF'd that as well, but it's quite short, so I saw it through to find out how it ended. And even at the end, like, I think it was supposed to be quite a dramatic ending, but because I didn't care about any of the characters, I just didn't care how it ended. So I think the ending was probably quite lost on me because I was just a bit disengaged from it. So then I decided to pick up one of the books that me and Simon had got during our Christmas charity shop book haul, and it was What I Saw and How I Lied by Judy Blundell. So when we hauled this, I didn't really know much about it, and I suspected that there might have been some vampires in it. It was giving me vampire-y feels, and that wasn't the case. It was nothing at all to do with vampires, so I hope that nobody's bought that book on my suggestion because I was completely wrong, and if so, I apologise and will reimburse you. It's basically about this family, and the stepdad comes back from war, so they all decide that they're going to go on holiday. They go to California, but it's not in season, so everywhere's closed. They meet this other family, they become friendly, and then one of the stepdad's old army buddies rocks up, and the stepdaughter has a bit of a crush, and he appears to have a crush on her as well. And it's basically about their romance. And then all of a sudden, the stepdad, the mum and the boyfriend all go out on a boating trip, and only the stepdad and the mum comes back. So it's a wee bit of a murder mystery there, and the police suspect that there's been foul play and that the stepdad or the mum has actually murdered ex-friend / boyfriend. And it's basically about the court trial and how that goes, and basically how the daughter navigates her way through this. Again, the characters in it, they were just quite forgettable. I didn't really connect with any of the characters, to be honest. I think it was supposed to be a bit of a coming of age story, so I think you were supposed to root for the teenager. I didn't at all. I just felt like she was quite bland, she was quite annoying, and she was just a bit typical teenager, and I appreciate, again, it's YA, so a lot of the characters in YA books are just your typical teenager, but I can connect to them, and I could not connect to her, and I felt like it was so obvious in the build up. So the mum and the boyfriend slash ex-friend, the stepdad, like, they're very clearly sleeping together, and through the naivety of the teenage girl's eyes, she can't see that. But as a reader reading it, like, you can tell that they're sleeping together, that they're a bit flirty together, and that something else is at play here. And you obviously get to know that, and then have her find out that her mum's sort of sleeping with the person that she believes she loves and has also considered sleeping with, which is obviously quite traumatic. But again, see, because I didn't connect to any of the characters, like, I just didn't really care about it. And again, because it was so obvious for me, I found it really annoying that she hadn't even considered it. The only good thing about the book, I guess, its only saving grace, was it was sort of set in post-war time, and I quite like that era, the style, and there was very much of that in it. But it wasn't enough to make the book worthwhile reading. I probably wouldn't have wasted my time on it if I didn't think it was about vampires, and I don't know why I thought that. Like, I have completely made this up out of my own brain. The blurb doesn't suggest vampires, it suggests a mystery, and the mystery I just assumed was mysterious vampire. No, the case. So I think I ruined it for myself, because I probably wouldn't have picked it up, and I probably wouldn't have read it if I knew it wasn't about vampires. But that's my own fault, and I guess no the book's fault. But again, I rated it 1 star. It was just very forgettable and a bit bland for me. I didn't feel like there was enough story in the book, and again, it was quite a short novel, so I like shorter novels because I feel like they tend to pack a punch a lot quicker than maybe what a series would, for instance. But they've been killing me this month. They've been right letting me down. So then I decided, maybe if everything else hasn't taken my fancy, we've tried a wee bit of a horror, we've tried sort of a couple-centric story, we've tried what I believe to be a wee bit of a historical vampire fiction, which wasn't. I thought, right, let's give YA fantasy a go again. Maybe I've read enough that I'll be thankful to go back to my sort of main genre and maybe find some comfort in it and connect to the characters in it a wee bit more. So Simon got me the Six of Crows duology as part of my Christmas, and he got me the beautiful collector's editions. They're absolutely gorgeous. They've been absolutely teasing me and catching my eye for the bookshelf, so I was like, right, let's do Six of Crows and see how I feel. And it gets so much hype. People love it. It's described as like sort of an Ocean's 11 type heist, but done in a fantasy setting. And I've noticed that theme a lot with some books that are coming out, that it's sort of doing different things but in a fantasy setting. I've seen a lot of like murder mysteries and things but done in a fantasy setting. Private investigators done within a fantasy setting, and it's never something that I've really read before. I'm quite I like a fantasy trope, like that's why I read fantasy. So this was a wee bit different for me, but I thought I'll give it a try. And Lee Bardugo is quite well known. Our books get a lot of praise, there's a lot of hype. And particularly because the Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows duology have been merged together in a Netflix TV show, which I believe is coming out quite soon, end of April-ish, I think, in the UK. So I've seen that loads of people online are trying to read all of those before the show comes out so that they can watch it. So I thought I'll give it a read and I'll see how I find it. I was quite disappointed. So right off the bat, you're thrown into this world. Obviously, Six of Crows is set after the Shadow and Bone trilogy, so there's not a great deal of world building, which is fine. I appreciate that you're supposed to have read, or would like to have read, the Shadow and Bone trilogy before you jump into Six of Crows. But Lee Bardugo did a thing on her Instagram recently where she debunked that and says no, like you can jump right into Six of Crows and have no bother with it. So there wasn't a great deal of world building, but I appreciate I have chosen to read it in this order, so that's maybe my bad. I felt like nothing happened in the book for probably the first 3/4 of the book. It's just sort of a build up, and I feel like the characters, while they have witty banter, like, and I obviously like that, I quite like it in a character, and in case you can't tell by our channel, quite a fan of the witty banter stuff, so something I really enjoy, and I just felt like I wasn't enjoying it as much with these characters. I don't know why, but it just felt a bit forced. Like, I felt like Leigh Bardugo, when she was writing these characters, almost came up with colourful witty lines that she wanted her characters to say, and then base the character around that, as opposed to having a character and then writing through that character's perspective. I felt like a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the comments were quite interchangeable, so I felt like her characters didn't really have a great deal of dimension. And I had commented on one of my Facebook book groups that I'm on, that's for YA fantasy addicts, and I had just said that I was really struggling to get on board with it, and there wasn't a lot of people that had the same problem as me. People really connected to the characters instantly. They didn't really feel like they were as interchangeable. Loads of folk gave me hate because I wasn't reading it in the right order. Simmer down, Karen, like, it's YA fantasy, it's not like a cure for world hunger. Like, I've just refused, like, simmer down. I could not get on board with it. And then the last wee bit of the book was quite good. The ending was quite exciting. It's sort of where most of the action happens, and loads of people on my posts had said that they actually preferred Crooked Kingdoms, which is the second one in the duology, to Six of Crows. And again, I just feel like I didn't want to have to read a full book to get to the good one. Like, I just hate that. Like, if you don't wow me through the first one, then I'm not going to pick up the second one, because we know how bad I am for starting a series and no finishing it. So if there's series on my shelves that I actually enjoy, I would much rather read further into those series as opposed to just reading the second book in a duology, even though I didn't particularly like the first one, just because, like, people say it's a wee bit better. So I was really quite disappointed in it. I thought that was going to be the turning moment for me in the month, and I was going to, like, have a far better reading month after that, and I was so disappointed because it gets so much hype. I think that's maybe the downfall of consuming so much BookTube, is that you totally fall prey to the hype, and if there's somebody that you follow who has a similar opinion in books as you, and they've really liked a book that's getting a lot of hype, and then you read it, you're almost like, how dare you insinuate I would like this? Like, I'm gutted right now. And you do totally fall prey to the hype, and I think that can influence your book buying. Maybe I wouldn't have picked up Six of Crows if it hadn't been hyped so much. I do have Shadow and Bone, so I'd be interested to read that and see if it's just Leigh Bardugo's writing I kind of get on board with, or if the characters are different. So I'd definitely be interested to give that a read quite soon and see how I'm feeling about that. So next up, I decided, no, like, I'm sticking to the fantasy. I need a fantasy that's going to grab me. So I read Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and this actually was a bit of a turning point for me. So right away I was drawn into this world. She sold me for probably the first 20 pages or so about the type of story it was going to be and the type of characters we were going to have, and I was like, finally! It's all I've wanted all month, as a book with some decent characters that I can get on board with. And she delivered it. To be honest, I really liked the characters for the get-go, so I was already invested, but I don't feel like the story picks up to maybe about halfway through the book, and then the second half of the book is absolutely brilliant. But I feel like the first half of the book's probably a lot of build-up and a lot of backstory, which, you know me, like, instant gratification kind of gal, so I want the story to be punching my face in for, like, right at the get-go. So that was a wee bit annoying for me. But then the end of it was absolutely fantastic. I rode through this book, I think I did it like over 2 days. I read it physically and then did the audiobook while I was sort of packing up and stuff, but I really enjoyed it. So this is about 2 sisters, Scarlett and Donatella, and Scarlett has written to Legend, who is the master of the Caraval, which is like a touring theatre company, and they go to different places every year, and she has written to them every year since she was a little girl to get them to come and do a show where she lives, because her dad will not allow them to leave the island, and she really wants to see it. And every year he doesn't write back, there's no response. And then when she's a teenager, he writes back to her, she writes him and basically says, look, this year's no the year to be coming to my gaff, I'm getting married, so bolt, I'm not interested. And that's when he writes back and he sends her tickets to go and see the Caraval performance. But when you get there, you can either perform, or you can either, just watch the performance, or you can play Caraval. So it's a bit of a game as well. And her sister Donatella goes missing, and it's basically on Scarlett to find her. And if Scarlett wants to win Caraval and win a wish, then she needs to find her sister. And that's what the basis of the book is. There's quite a few twists and turns in it, and it's one of these books where you're never really sure whose side you're on, or who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, which I just find really interesting. And I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to read the second one in the series. I wasn't too sure, so like I say, I really enjoyed it. It was the best book that I had read so far in the month, because everything else that I had read was abysmal. And by the end of this book I was like I don't know if I'll pick up the next one in the series, because I have enjoyed it and I really did like the characters, but like this is sort of a complete journey almost, so you don't really need to read the next ones. There's another 2, so it's a trilogy. But when I got to the end, I was like, no, I'm definitely going to read the next one. I believe that the next one is going to be for her sister's perspective, knowing the same story. She's obviously having a journey of her own, and it's going to be for her perspective, so I think that could be quite interesting, because this one's from Scarlett's. So I definitely think that I'd pick up the next one in the series. I really enjoyed this. It was just a quick wee easy breezy read. The characters are good, I was drawn into the world, I was invested, and there's a couple of twists and turns along the way, so it was just a really easy wee read. So next up I read Bury Me in Our Eyes by Non Noman. So Simon just picked this for me randomly a few months ago. He thought it sounded quite interesting, he thought that it was up my street, so he just bought it for me. And then it arrived and he was like, don't remember ordering this, like what the hell is this? But it was for me, so that was nice. So this book, I think the concept of it is really cool. So what the author wanted to achieve is he basically wanted to write a bit of a love letter to his girlfriend, and one of the loves of her life is language. So he wanted to write basically a book where many different languages from all across the world blend seamlessly together, and loads of other people could then experience it. So it says that it's the first multilingual work of literature ever created. Which sounds like a really cool concept. However, I don't speak many languages. I could do a wee bit Spanish, I can do a wee bit Dothraki, I can swear in Norwegian, I can do a wee bit Vulcan, I can do a wee bit Elvish. I struggle to grasp English though, let's be fair. So it's not Dothraki or Elvish or any other made up language, they're actual languages, so I had to Google translate it all, which isn't really the point. What the author basically wants you to do is he wants you to find someone in your life that speaks one of these languages and have them read that particular passage to you, and for them to translate it to you, which is really cool. In theory, he wants it to be an interactive experience. However, maybe the worst possible time in life ever to choose a book that's supposed to be a bit of an interactive experience, because we're still in lockdown, so I cannot interact with anyone other than Simon and the dog, and there is not a chapter in Barkeys, so neither of them could help me with that. maybe it's something that I would pick up and give a go again in the future, but was quite interested to read it, so I just picked it up. If I didn't actually know it was supposed to be a bit of an interactive experience, it doesn't really say that in it. So the book's in two halves, and the first half is about the author and his journey writing it and the struggles that he faced, and then the second half is actually like the book. And in his half, he didn't explain that he wanted it to be a bit of an interactive experience, although he did say that in writing it, that's sort of what it became for him. So maybe I've just been really dense and I've not taken away from that the fact that that's what it's supposed to also be for me. I didn't pick that up until I was reading some of the reviews on it and people were saying that. So maybe it's me and I have read it wrong. Who knows? Every chance, probably. I felt like it was a really interesting concept, and the concept was probably better than the execution. I read a lot of poetry, although I've never really spoken about it on the channel. It's something that I'm really interested in. It's something that I really enjoy, but I'm quite weird with my poetry. There's a lot of poetry that I don't actually like. I'm quite a niche poetry reader. So I really enjoy Philip Larkin. I really enjoy David Jones. I really enjoy Sylvia Plath, just to name a couple. And I just felt like this was a bit lacking. I felt like the content, what he was trying to say, like he does a bit of a space theme, so he mirrors it with absolutely beautiful images in the book. I'll show you a couple of pages, and the images are gorgeous and they match really well the words that he is trying to say, which makes for this absolutely beautiful setting. And I really appreciated that, but I just felt like the poem was a wee bit lacking for me. I felt like he focused far more on the pictures matching what he was trying to say and having the languages blend together properly, as opposed to actually the content of the poem. So his overall message, I think, was a bit lost on me. I just didn't really enjoy it too much. I felt like there was just no substance to it, and I get the point. Like, he obviously did it about space, and it was supposed to be about how space is so vast and so massive, and they still managed to find each other, and how all his atoms wanted to be with all her atoms, and they basically wanted to split himself all up into atoms so that he could go and his atoms could live in her eyes, hence the bury me in her eyes, which, like, is a lovely concept. I get that. I just felt like the way he went around trying to describe that wasn't the greatest. Like, I've just described that in about 2 sentences, and he's described it over 50 pages in like 32 different languages, and I felt like it got really confusing at some points. Like, he brings sort of like Titans into it, even though it's supposed to be a bit about space, so why is Greek mythology involved? And then, like, it gets a bit sciencey in parts, which makes sense because of the space stuff. And it was just a bit confusing, it was a bit convoluted, and I think he got wrapped up in his idea, which is a really cool idea, more than he concentrated on what he was actually trying to say. And the bit where he talks about himself in the beginning as well, and his journey with the book, it started off basically that he wanted to propose to his girlfriend and he didn't really know how to do it, so this is basically his proposal. But then in that, he basically says that the idea completely consumed him, and he'd like work at his job at night because he was a bartender, and then during the day, instead of sleeping, he'd maybe only get a couple of hours sleep, and then he'd stay up and he'd drink coffee and he'd smoke too much and he'd drink too much, and he would just work on this non-stop. They actually then didn't have a lot of time for his girlfriend, and they drifted apart. And he says that he totally put this book first because, like I say, the idea completely consumed him, that it got to the point where he finished it and he was ready to propose. He wasn't even sure that she would say yes, and I just feel like that's so sad. Like, you've had a great relationship, you love this person so much, you want to get married, and you make up this absolutely nuts way of proposing and push her away that much that you didn't even know she'll say aye anymore because you've created this distance between yous. I just felt like that was so sad, and like, also, if you were aware that you are creating this distance, why would you not just put a stop to it? Like, and I get it, like Simon's very idea driven, so the scariest words that Simon ever says to me is, I've had an idea, and I'm like, oh god, what now? Like, what shenanigans and tomfoolery are we going to have to get up to because you've had an idea? But I just feel like he would never have an idea and run with it to the point where it would come between us, especially if it was an idea that was supposed to be him proposing, like, or something that was supposed to be romantic. I just feel like that goes against it. So I don't know if that maybe also put me off the poem a wee bit, because I was sort of feel like, I mean, aye, very good, like, you're saying you believe this, but you've no bothered your arse about your girlfriend for months. So maybe I was coming at it from that point of view on reflection. Who knows? But I rated it 2 stars, slightly higher than some of the other reads that I've read this month, just because the concept's really cool, the artwork's really cool. So, like, even if the poem wasn't grabbing me, like, it was quite an interactive experience to, like, translate what all the languages are, discover what all the languages were, sort of if you single out particular words, and the drawings in it, the graphics in it were absolutely gorgeous, so it was nice to see those as well. So it was a very different and very unique reading experience, which is why it scored a wee bit higher, even though I wasn't absolutely thrilled with the content. And then I read Nightlights, and this is by Lorena Alvarez. So this is about a little girl, Sandy, and basically she's a great artist, she's fantastic at drawing, and at night she can make all of her drawings come to life. Anything at all that she draws and imagines, she can make come to life, and she has a great wee time in the evenings just playing with her own creations that she's brought to life, which is just adorable. And then a bit of a creepy character comes along. There's a new girl at school, and she's quite fascinated by her drawings, and also obviously by the fact that she can make them come to life. It transpires that this wee creepy character isn't all she seems. She's a bit of a ghost, and she basically wants Sandy to create creations for her so that her and her ghost pals can feed on them, on the promise that they won't harm her, they won't hurt her, and if she denies them, then it's going to get a bit nasty. But in the end, well, in fact, I'm not going to tell you what happens in the end, because if you want to know what happens in the end, you'll need to read it. But this is a graphic novel, and it's just so adorable. It was an absolutely lovely wee story. I really loved all Sandy's wee creations, and she's just adorable. I'll show you some cool pictures. I just love all the wee creations that she draws. I think they are so cute, and Sandy's just lovely. She's such a wee sassy pants, which is fantastic, and she has this teacher who's a nun, and she just does not get on with her. She's like, I just want to do things my own way, and she's so adorable. Yeah, so it's definitely on the younger side of things, but it was so adorable. It was such a quick, lovely wee read, and the illustrations in it are so beautiful. When they're trying to get a wee bit creepier, are definitely creepy, and the ones that Sandy creates for herself is just so cute, and I really love that you got to see them come out of her imagination and then get to see them come to life. The first picture is her drawing all these creations, and so you can sort of see the rough ideas, and then you can see when she brings them alive at night, and it was really beautiful just to see that bit of her imagination come to life. It was absolutely fantastic, and no surprise to anybody, but it's the first in a series. I will definitely get the next one. It's not out till later on in the year. I think it's not out until middle of April, maybe end of April, but I definitely get the second one, because Sandy's just so adorable. She's dead lovable. She's so cheeky, and it's great. I think she's just lovely, and I can't wait to see what the next story looks like. So I rated this one 4 stars. It was just fantastic. It was a really good time. A really nice pick me up as well if you had maybe a bit of a mince day, just to jump in and just see some of the wee adorable creations that she has brought to life. I thought it was just lovely. And then I read A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett Sinclair. So this is a Hades Persephone retelling. It's supposed to be set in the modern day, so Persephone is an aspiring journalist, she's at college, and Hades is like runs a bunch of nightclubs and a bit of a businessman, bit of a socialite, and it was dreadful. To be truthful, I really didn't enjoy this one. I really like a Hades and Persephone retelling. There's something about that character where they're perceived to be like bit of a baddie, bit of a bad reputation, nobody really likes them, nobody trusts them, and then just getting to know them and them having that softer side of them for whoever it is that comes along, in this case Persephone, and sort of breaking down those barriers and really getting to know that they're actually a bit of a sweetheart, that just gets me. I find it so endearing. And so that's why I tend to like Hades and Persephone retellings, you know, Beauty and the Beast retellings, things like that. It's probably why in a lot of the books I kind of side with the villain. I guess I just like that type of character, and I feel like in a lot of Hades and Persephone retellings they do that so well with Hades, and he's actually a bit of a cutie. And that was not the case with this book at all. I'd describe it as a bit like a 50 Shades of Grey fanfic. So if 50 Shades is Twilight fanfic and A Touch of Darkness is 50 Shades fanfic, it's basically just a big circle jerk of crappy relationships and bad sex, to be honest. It was really disappointing. There's no substance to it at all. I feel like you don't really ever get on board with Hades or Persephone's relationship in this, because you don't actually really know how they feel about each other than the fact they want to bang constantly, and that's it. There's no other feeling. There's no like a slow burn romance where she, you know, he grows on her over time or she grows on him over time. Like, they see each other in one of his clubs and she doesn't know who he is, and she's like, want to bang you, son, and he sees her and he's like, want to bang you, hen, and that's it. He gets her basically into a contract, and he says to her, like, if you grow life in the underworld, you'll be free your contract. And so she thinks that she needs to grow a garden, and in fact it's a ploy because, like, they want her to get pregnant again with the banging. That's basically what this book was. How many pages is it? 341. So probably about 300 of the pages are sex scenes. And, like, I feel like I'm such a prude because I was moaning about sex scenes in books in the last wrap up as well. I do not mind sex scenes in books if they are valid and that is not the entire plot. Like, I welcome sex scenes in books. I am good with that. That is no bother at all. What I don't like is when instead of actually having a plot, you just put in a sex scene. Like, oh well, I'm not really too sure what to write for this next chapter. Oh well, we'll just have them pump. Like, no, like, give me characters that I can relate to. Give me a storyline. Don't just give me sex. Like, it's not why I read. Like, I don't want to read that. Like, and I felt like that's exactly what this book did. I felt like Hades and Persephone, their characters individually or their relationship together was never fully developed. I felt like a lot of the side characters in it as well were just a bit generic, and I actually felt like it followed some of the tropes that were in 50 Shades of Grey. Jealous exes being a wee bit manipulative, and Persephone being in situations where Hades comes to rescue her from guys who are maybe getting a little too amorous, again, like in 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, puppy's having a bad dream. That's how bad the book is. So it was very, very disappointing, and I just felt like they really did Hades and Persephone disjustice. I felt like it could have been so much more. I actually felt like there wasn't even a lot of the underworld portrayed in this, because a lot of the interactions that Hades and Persephone had were at his club. And then when they were in the underworld, a lot of it was just in his castle, and so I felt like you didn't really get to explore the underworld as much. And I've heard this is supposed to be a 10-part series, and what they're doing is one book will be from Persephone's perspective, like this one, and then the next one will be from Hades' perspective. And that is a trend that's really bugging me, because I just feel like, why not give me it for both characters' perspectives in the one book? Like, if that's how you want to write it, absolutely grand, and I love a dual perspective, because I feel like you get to experience a lot more that way. But don't give me it in separate books. Like, I just feel like that is a money grabbing ploy, and that bugs me. And again, who did that? Oh, Twilight and 50 Shades. Mince. So yes, I rated that a 1 star. I was completely disappointed in it. I think they could have done so much more, but instead they just focused on the sex and nothing else. Boring. So after that, I couldn't face anything else that would be remotely romantic. So I picked up a horror and I read Angela by Adam M. Booth. So this is from the perspective of a dad who has killed himself and has left behind his daughter Angela, and it's about him basically just witnessing her life and the situation that he's basically left her in after committing suicide. And I really enjoyed it, actually. So Angela's a really interesting character. In the beginning she reminded me a wee bit of Eleanor from Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. That sort of a character. Works in an office, doesn't have really much of a life out with the office, doesn't have any real friends other than her colleagues. The difference between Angela and Eleanor is that Eleanor doesn't think that there's anything wrong with her life, whereas Angela feels really lonely and she knows that there's something wrong. So she collects birds, and by collects, she will keep them. If they fly in her windows, she will steal them if she sees them out and about and she takes a particular liking to them. And she will buy any birds from any pet shop that she feels she takes a shine to. So she's basically converted one of the rooms in her house into her bird room. And she doesn't keep them caged, she just lets them fly about wherever they see fit in that room. And then when they pass, she keeps them and she nails them to her wall in the hall, and she likes watching them decay. She finds it beautiful, and then what she's left with is basically a bit of a bone wall, and she likes that witchy aesthetic. So it's dead interesting. They talk about a badness being in their blood and about letting someone in. So through the book you're not really sure whether it is a paranormal entity that's maybe possessing or cursing this family's bloodline, or if they're just quite mentally ill. And in the end, I definitely think that it was mental illness. I believe that Angela is schizophrenic. I believe that her dad was schizophrenic, and I believe that they didn't really know that. Otherwise, they could have sought help, and their lives could have been differently. They could have been different, which is quite inherently sad. But it was a really, really good book. It was really creepy at points. There was quite a few twists and turns in it. And I really liked Angela as a character. I felt like Adam Booth did a really, really great job writing her as a character that you feel sorry for, and even though she's doing these horrible things, and even though you know she's a complete weirdo, you can't help but feel for her, and I love that. So I really enjoyed the book. I'm not going to say much more about it, because I do recommend picking this up. There's some really dark imagery in here. Some things are really creepy, quite vulgar at points, but I think that it paints a really great picture. and I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. So I'll not say too much about the plot, because I feel like if I was to say anything else it would give it away, really. But yeah, it was a dead interesting book, and I liked the fact that it was from her dad's perspective watching it, because you sort of forget a bit of his backstory as well, and what led him to his suicide, and his shortcomings almost as a dad, which was interesting. I've never really read a book like that before, so I really recommend this. I thought it was brilliant. You can do it in a day. It's only took me a couple hours to read, really, so it's a short wee book, but I really enjoyed it, and I gave this one a 4-star. Then next up I started reading The Dead House by Dawn Kurtagich. So again, this is one of the ones that we picked up during our Christmas charity shop book haul, and I've actually DNF'd this one at about 65 pages. I normally give a book 100, but I know I'm just not feeling this, so I'm not going to bother getting to 100 so that I can DNF. There's no much point. It's about a girl, and her name's Carly. She has DID, and her other personality is Caitlin, and it's about their struggle being in the one body. There's a tragedy at the school that they go to. I believe that they are going to get the blame for it, and it's in diary form, so it's based on the diary that Carly and Caitlin leave for each other, so that they sort of know what the other person's been up to and what's going on. In some formats it is entries from their therapist notes, and it's positioned almost as if you're reading a police case against them, which I thought was a really cool concept, which is partly the reason why I picked it up. However, I'm just not getting on with it at all. I just feel like it's really young, and I know I read a lot of younger books, but this just isn't doing it for me. I feel like the author has written it in a certain way to try and attract a certain demographic, and I am not that demographic. I feel like she's just shoehorning in little references. So like, she talks about Star Trek and stuff, which is great. I'm a big Trekkie, but I feel like she's done it deliberately so that maybe alternative geeky teenagers will be like, oh my god, this book is so cool because it talks about Star Trek, like, because it's just out of the blue and there's no need for that to be there. And they shoehorn in references to like Sherlock Holmes, and just even the character style that she describes is very much that sort of I'm so alternative teenager. Like, I was that teenager, so if I maybe picked this up when I was that age, I'd maybe connect to it a wee bit more. But currently, as Amy now, I just find it a wee bit annoying, and the plot hasn't really gripped me so far. Maybe 65 pages isn't enough to really test that, but I just feel for the length of the book that it is, it's like 450 pages. Something should have happened by now that has gripped me, whether it be the world or a character or a plot point or even the writing style, and none of that has gripped me, so I'm DNFing it and moving on. And then lastly this month I read Da 3 Stories by Limmy. I just felt like I needed something that I knew I was going to like, and I couldn't pick up a book by Limmy and no like it, because the man is just a legend, let's be fair. He is a Scottish comedian, and I've read his other book, That's Your Lot, and I really liked it. He's basically just written exactly what it says on the tin, a book of daft wee stories, and I mean, some of the stories are as short as a couple of sentences, some of them are a wee bit longer, so it is a real mix. But he's just fantastic. He has this way just writing characters that you know you could walk out onto your street and meet. He's just so fantastically and uniquely Scottish. Like, some of the stories are so dark, like, and you're like, oh my god, like, I can't believe I've just read that, that's brilliant. And some of them are like properly ridiculous, and you're like laughing your head off just at how absolutely stupid it is. But he just, even in the stories that are so short that they're only a couple of sentences, he creates these colourful characters that you know, like, you can just pinpoint people that you know in your life who are exactly that person. It was absolutely fantastic, and I'd give it a 5-star. I think he's just brilliant. He's so funny, and if you like Glimmy's show, which is his TV show that he does, then definitely check out his books, because it is basically him. Like, it could basically be a script for one of his TV shows in a book. He's absolutely fantastic. My favourite story, and it's so ridiculous, I appreciate that, but I don't know why, I'm laughing thinking about it. It made me laugh a lot. He's basically written it upside down, so you have to turn the book around to read it, and he's like, oh, this is written upside down, so if somebody's just walked into the room and saw you reading this book, you look like you've been up to something that you shouldn't have been up to, and you've just grabbed the book. And if you're reading it on a beach, you're going to look like a pervert, because you're looking like you're staring at somebody's arse but trying to pretend like you're reading a book when you're actually reading a book. And he lists off all these different scenarios, and then at the end of it he's like, aye, that's the full story, I just wanted to get you into a wee bit of trouble, which is just like the daftest thing ever, but you can't no smile, you can't no laugh. I've done half of this physical and half of it audiobook, and it's Limmy that does the audiobook as well, and I just couldn't imagine anybody else really doing it. It's not like you can sit Stephen Fry down and have him read it. So it's great that it's Limmy that's done it, because he's just so funny. He's absolutely fantastic. So if you like Limmy, or if you like short stories, I definitely recommend that you pick it up and give it a read. It's just, it's so funny. Don't get me wrong, it's like every short story collection, like some of them will be funnier than others, you know. In short stories I feel like they're always a bit hit or miss, but I don't know, see, just because it's still Limmy, it's still funny, and I don't know why. I just think he's brilliant. There's a lot of arse jokes, there's a lot of jobby jokes, but it's just brilliant. It's just a bit silly, and definitely I think what I needed to end off this fairly poor reading month. And I'm not going to jinx myself for April, because I feel like that didn't work so well last month, so I'm not saying nothing. So thank you very much for listening to me ramble. If anybody has made it through the video this far, well done. You deserve a medal, because I know I'm a gibberer. Like, I just go off in tangents, I feel. I didn't feel like I really structure my points. I think I need to learn to be more concise, but I mean, who I am, so can't help it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next month. Bye.